I ain't really wanna be wolfing when it's wartime. Niggas love the clout chase, that's the shit they glorify. I don't even try hard, this gangsta shit immortalized. No records of a trace when your crime is organized. No man is over me, I'm highest in the morning time. Low key in the birds when I cross the state borderlines. Spin your block and horrified. Fuck your bitch, you mortified. I'm standing where you draw the line, nigga, hold the line. My nutsack, I'm grabbing mine, both of mine, quit holding mine. You gon' get this work and some overtime, you know the vibe. Little nigga, you know it's me. I don't need them to notice me. When conflict get crucial, I can't help but do them bogusly. Smoke you like a stogie, beat you like you stole from me. Niggas out of body, put you back where you supposed to be. I shoot at you waking in the moment, niggas toast for you. My niggas do the most for me, that's what they supposed to. I want all the smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough to test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, if you came with me. You know what's going, stop playing with me. I want all the smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough to test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, if you came with me, gang. You know what's going, stop playing with me. Real gangsters move critically when that shit get critical. No peace amongst enemies, no pity for the pitiful. Real nigga down to the bones and the minerals. Stick to the G code, I never told another soul. True to the literature, now salute the general. Kill you on your birthday, then slide on your funeral. It ain't about the clout chase, I'm a man of principle. Niggas out of body, now they body isn't critical. Cradle to the casket, the life we live is typical. God body, cause I will depart you from your physical. Niggas living fantasies, act like they was the only one. Don't talk to me about these streets, fuck you think you know me from. Just cause you related to them gangsters, that don't make you one. I ain't got no bloodline in these streets, but I can spill me some. I ain't got no mercy for this bitch, that she outside with us. They on demon time, we bring them hell and the fire with us. All this smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough to test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, and you came with me. You know what's going, stop playing. I want all this smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough to test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, and you came with me. Gang, you know what's going, stop playing with me.
What's good? What's good? What's cracking? Yeah, we back at it, right? You know what I'm saying? I know you see the title, right? Yeah. You know, we got dirt on you, doggy. Yeah, we're gonna look into that $3,000 book that they got, right? You know, and we got the PDF, right? So we're gonna, look through some things, right? Get some history, right? Go through the evidence on these people as we exposing them for who they are, right? So yeah, that's what we on with it. You digs? So of course though, we're gonna start by giving all praises to the Most High, and we do so in His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world know as Jesus Christ, right? So yeah, right? Just 1 second, y'all. This was in Timothy. But yeah, right? So yeah, we're gonna get into it though. Let's see, hold up. Yeah, we're trying to get me sick over here. Just want to read this real quick. So it's a Second Thessalonians 2 and 3, right? So it says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there be a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed." And that's what we're doing, revealing that man of sin, right? These people done hidden themselves, throughout the centuries under this cloak. And it says, "Until that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition," right? Meaning that, the person that is destined for destruction, right? Let's get one more before we get into this thing. Yeah, we tried to do this a little earlier and stuff. They, I don't know, the powers that be didn't want to hear it. They tried to shut it down. So I guess, got to do better with these code words. Yeah. Because look, but this is what we own, right? Genesis 25 and 19, right? We're going to rate this. Right? And it says, "Therefore it shall be when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thy enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy God given thee for inheritance, to possess it, that thou should blot out." What do we got to do? Blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget it. Right? So, like I said, we got to reveal this man of perdition. Blot him out. You know what I'm saying? Reveal him. Expose him. Bring him to the front of the congregation. Right? So, that's what we're going to do. So, yeah, hold on one sec. Let's go. Alright, let's try this one more time, right? Yeah, like I said, they tried to hate on us the first time. So, we're going to do like we was doing last time and say those people, right? So it says, Seymour Lieben, a Jewish man himself, unintentionally exposes those people. Then it says, the New World Jewry is a okay. Hold on, boom, boom, boom. Says the New World Jewry is presented in a highly scholarly and academic style, drawn from primary historical documents, officially legal codes, church decrees, and government archives. It's meticulous citations, formal analysis, and reliances on verifiable sources give it weight of serious academic research rather than more mere opinion, making its conclusions difficult to dismiss. Meaning, the guy that wrote this book put a lot of scholarly and scholastic work into this thing, right? It's not just a bunch of opinions, right? It's a historian you know, reaccounting historical events, right? Then it says, it says, New World Jewry exposed a rarely discussed layer of history revealing how the H-Man, anti-Semi-Nuremberg laws were modeled in part earlier Catholic Church statutes that restrict those people in Europe. The book uncovers the H-Man, hidden agenda, and deep institutional roots of these laws, showing that very showing that the very people modern society calls those people were conflicted in legal systems that later target them. By documenting their role in their disqualification according to biblical and historical standards, the book indirectly points towards who the true Israelites really are, who the true Israelites are. This uncomfortable truth, backed by rare historical records, is a major reason why New World Jewry commands such a high price today, right? And it says, historical records show that the Catholic Church laws and attitudes towards those people long predated the H-Man, and in many ways laid the foundation for his ideology. The Inquisition, persecution of those people, the creation of the legal restriction on where they could live, what jobs they could have, what jobs they can hold, how they dress, and even their forced conversions were all well established centuries before the 20th century, right? Because again, during the Spanish Inquisition, when they started deporting a lot of them, kicking them out, and then forcing them to convert to Catholicism. So a lot of them, to stay in power, to keep their positions that they had, they converted into Catholicism, right? But then the powers that be at the time, didn't really trust their conversion so much, because they like, well, y'all converted to our faith, but you guys are still practicing the same practices that y'all practice, meaning not anything religious, but as far as their business dealings, their the way that they were functioning within the country, right? So that's what they, so then they started putting restrictions on how they do business, right? Because they were basically robbing their country. We're going to get into that. So then it says, if the people, hold on, one second. Okay, give me some. Oh yeah, so like it. So yeah, what was it? So it says, it was held the Catholic Church to the same moral. Hold on, let me read it right. If people held the Catholic Church to the same moral scrutiny they applied to the H-Man, they would see that much of his policies wasn't invented out of thin air. It was borrowed and adopted from existing framework of anti-synthetic statutes and theologies crafted by religious authorities. The outrage should be consistent because the roots of his ideology are directly tied to the church policies, not just his personal hatred, right? And so we know the history of the Catholic Church. We know the violence that they caused all around the world, everywhere they went, right? Their crusades and, everywhere, right? We know the history. And, so basically saying that, his laws that they end up passing and, stuff like that, his ideology that was developed, basically that was the foundation of it. And we know that, history tells us that, he was a Roman Catholic, right? And, it's a picture here with him, taking pictures with the Pope, what they call, during that time, the Black Pope, right? They call him the Black Pope because he was working with those people over there that was, running things. And so, they thought he was kind of shady. They thought he was a little dirty, so they called him the Black Pope, right? Then it says, what's going on the cover of the book? So on the cover of the book is one of those people, female, and she's getting burnt at the stake, by the order of the Catholic Church or whatever, because they was forcing people to convert, and right. So let's get into it. So it says, page 47 confirms that the cover image depicts the burning of Mariana Kajav in 1601. She was a conversa, a person of one of those people, ancestries who had converted to Catholicism. So, she was one of them that they, forced into Catholicism, and they call them conversas, right? That's the word that they use, conversas, right? Then it says, often under pressure, who had converted to Catholicism, often under pressure, accused by the Spanish Inquisition of secretly practicing Judaism, right? So they, were starting to, persecute these people because although, some of them, a lot of them end up converting and they became what we call crypto, those people, right? And so, but they were still secretly, practicing their Judaism. And one of the most important things that they were doing with that was because they were using that law of usury, right? Where you can, loan somebody, loan somebody $100 and say, I want $1,000 back, right? Pay me in 30 days. If you don't give me my money in 30 days, I get to take your property, right? So then they started, they was doing stuff like that, right? And the people got tired of it. So that's when that's when the laws came in, right? So then it says, the scene shows her bound to a stake wearing the clonical carusa hat of shame. That little, what we call like the dunce hat, with the little horn at the top, where they used to see pictures back in school where they had the little kid sitting in the corner with the little thing on his head. So something like that. They had her wearing that as they were, burning her at the stake, right? Then standing atop standing atop stack of logs for execution by fire. One man secure her with the post, another tends the fire, and onlookers watch the public execution. This event reflects the brutal enforcement of the Catholic Orthodox in the New World, where the Inquisition targeted crypto those people and other deemed heretics. This this visual hold on. This visually embodies the book's central theme: persecution of those people in the Americas between 1493 and 1825, right? But just keep going. Then it says, in the very first page, the author says the indigenous people of South America identified those people with the devil, right? Just like the Bible do today. We identify them as the devil, right? I like saying it like that. I gotta say it like that, like the devil. They the devil, right? Gotta say it like with the with the conviction, with the what I'm saying, right? And it says let's read it. Let's read what it says on page 1. So page 1, it says, official government and church attitudes towards the Jews, abetted and encouraged by a large segment of the population, has resulted in history which is colorful, dramatic, and profound. Tragic discrimination, persecution, says, and the death, it said persecution and death have been the tolls paid by the descendants of Abraham for fulfilling their covenant with God. And every time and era, the non-Jewish world has rationalized its treatment of those people through the use of fear, prejudice, and superstition, right? Hold on one second. I just jumped down here. So it says, the association of those people with the devil was made obvious to this writer during travels in southern Mexico, the mountains of Guatemala, and the outskirts of how you say that? Arequipa, Peru, on their different occasion when I said. So, this guy's traveling through Mexico, and since these people have been down there for some time, so when they see another one of those people, they associate them with the devil. And why would you associate somebody with the devil, right? What warrants somebody being associated with the devil, right? We look at horrendous people that did horrendous things in history, and we say, that was very devilish of them. That was like some demon stuff they did, right? We look at people like Jeffrey Dahmer, and we're like, man, that was an evil person, right? So these people down in South America, our brothers and sisters, associated them with the devil, right? Because how they was treating them and enslaving them, right? So then it says, says, I am one of those people. The spontaneous reaction of my auditors was to stare at my face, at my forehead, to see horns. So he said, when I told them that I was one of those people, he said they started staring at me to see do they see horns, right? Then, cause that's what they looking for. Cause when you see one of them people, that's why they got the little things, they wear the little saucers on the top of their head, or sometimes they got the little sidelock rasta stuff going on. They be hiding the horns. That's what they hiding their horns, right? So our brothers was down there looking for the horns, cause like these people are evil, right? Then it says uh in in Bash I asked, hold on. Oh, embellish. Hold on, read it right. Let me start right here. It says and the spontaneous reaction of my auditors was to stare at my forehead to see horns. Embellish, I asked them why they were looking at my head. Two admitted surprise at not finding horns. So like the three men he was talking to, the two of them was like, "Oh, well, shit, dang, my bad. I thought you probably had horns on your head, because you people are like the devil, like literally. We're just trying to see if you had any horns. My bad." Then it says two admitted surprise at not finding horns, and one replied with embarrassment, no say, meaning I don't know. More surprising is the uh, the acceptance of prejudice as fact and respect the cause of academics. Boom, boom, boom. Then it says, let's get this. Then it says, it's Revelation 2:9, right? Because like I said, when these people go places, they don't go in peace, right? They don't come in peace at all. They appear to come in peace. It's like they move like cells almost, right? I think I was saying this last time. First, this is how they do. Just look at history. If you don't believe me, think I'm just saying stuff. Just look at a history book and tell me if this is not the sequence. First, they send out their explorers, their doctors. Then they might send out a few, military men just for protection, right? They send out their linguistics, people that can be able to translate stuff. And they go to these different places and they study the people and they learn. Then after they do that, then they send a military, or then maybe no. Matter of fact, they don't send a military. Then after they establish a colony, or talk the natives into letting them have a little part where they can just chill at, then they bring the military, right? And then that's when they steal all your stuff, right? So that's how it usually works, and that's how it goes. So Revelation 2:9 says, I know thy works in thy tribulation, because the real people are in tribulation. You know what I'm saying? We're not able to apply oppression on a group of people, right? The real Jews are in tribulation, so they're not in a position to dominate anybody and have them look at us as the most wicked people because of the pressure and stuff that we putting on them, right? It says, I know thy works in thy tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogues of Satan. That's what they are. That's what your Lord Christ, your Lord and Savior said about them. They are the synagogue of Satan, meaning, excuse me, the chief house of Satan, right? The top house, meaning you got little houses, you got little Satans, but then you got the big Satan, right? Then Revelation 3:9 says, Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them come and worship at thy feet, and thou and to know that I have loved thee. Right. So it's gonna come upon a time where these people is not gonna be doing what they doing no more. Then they gonna have to come and say, you know what, we was playing this whole time. My bad. We ain't really done. You know what I'm saying? Tricked you. You know what I'm saying? Like it. Like, I hope y'all don't take the joke too hard. You know, we was just playing, right? You know, hold on, let's get this real quick. I think it's in Jeremiah. Hold on. Inherited lies. Yeah, this Jeremiah 16 and 19, right? Because again, just read this one more time, right? So Revelation 3 and 9 says, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Right? And so it's gonna come upon a time, like I said, they're gonna come and worship at our feet, and they're gonna be like, you know what? Dang, we sorry, my bad. We done ran off with your name. We done ran your credit up. Done told everybody that we was you. We done lived in your house. You know, I mean, we paid the bills though, right? You know, kept the grass clean, right? You know, at least we cool on that, right? You know what I'm saying? So they're gonna have to fess up, right? They're gonna have to tell the world, and the world gonna know, right? Jeremiah 16 and 19 says, O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in that day of infliction. Because the Most High God protect his people, right? You know, he protect his people. But then it says, the Gentiles should come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, what they gonna say? What are these people gonna say? So they're gonna come from all over the world, and what they gonna say? Surely, what they gonna say? Surely, meaning, damn, god damn, right? Jeez. Oh my God. You know, zoiks. You know, what they say, Scooby-Doo, zoiks. Surely our father have inherited lies. So that's why they're gonna have to come and bow down at our feet and worship us. And he said that, and what it says, and to know that I have loved thee. And the thee is the Israelites, the true Israelites, the black, Hispanic, and Native American people, right? So that says, the Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our father have inherited lies, vanity, things wherein there is no profit. So all this bullshit stuff they've been told, you know, because you talk to one of them little Psylocke rosters, and they're going to tell you, well, my mother told me this, and blah, 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 you know, they did that, right? But then they're going to have to remember, or not remember, but it's going to come to a point where they're going to understand, surely our father have inherited lies and vanity and things wherein there is no profit. So they're going to come to that understanding. All this little stuff that they call themselves believing in, you know, it's fake. It's lies, vanity. And the real people of God is going to get revealed, right? So yeah, back over here. And it says, but why associate them with the devil, right? Let's see why they called these people the devil. Because, I mean, that's a very, you know, harsh thing to say to somebody, right? You know, you call somebody the devil, you know, you just hanging out and somebody that's walked past and somebody that's you hanging out with say, hey, that person is the devil, you be like, whoa, you're going to be kind of taken back, like, dang, what you mean by, like, wow, why they got to be the devil, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's what's going on there. It says, if we were being blunt and looking at it in a historical, especially in a New World jewry time frame, the indigenous people of South America forming uh, won't weren't forming that the association of they won't form they weren't forming association out of nowhere. Many Jews who came to the New World during the colonial period were conversos, Jews who had converted to Catholicism, sometimes voluntarily, often under pressure, and were a part of the Spanish and the Portuguese colonial system, i.e., slavery of black and browns, right? So, yeah, that because what a lot of people don't know, because some of our people like to, go hard on our Hispanic and Latino brothers, right? Like they don't share the same struggle, right? Because we suffer from colorism, right? Slavery done got us all in colorism, right? You know what I'm saying? Because they used to put the light skinned person, treat them a different way than a darker skinned person. And then we end up, throughout the years, develop colorism amongst ourselves where, you know, even, we tell jokes about light skinned people, right? Or light skinned people tell jokes about dark skinned people, right? Vice versa. Then you had this, tension, right? So, but that's all from the plantation, and we need to stop that, right? Now, and, of course, I do make light skinned jokes, right? I can admit, you know, but all that stuff does come from plantation, right? And so people gotta understand the first slave ships left with Christopher Columbus and these dudes when they came over here on this side in the Caribbean and saw our Taino brothers, our Puerto Rican brothers, and said, "Hey, these are some nice, peaceful people. There's still 1,000 of them, and take them back to Spain, where 700 of them died on the way there, and they only 300 made it." And you know what they said after that? This was good business. Let's go do this again, right? And they did it again and again and again, right? Until we had the transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade started with our Hispanic and Latino brothers, right? We got to understand that, right? Although we talk about 1619, it started way before that, right? So we got to get that understanding. That's when it started. So it says, here's the raw truth. Historians have rooted part. Here's the raw truth. Historians have noted. Where we at? This thing keep on. That's because the size keep on changing on me. All right, here we go. Participation in colonial economy. Some conversos engaged in slave trading, plantation ownership, and resource exploitation, just like other European colonists. So this is cool, right? And because a lot of those people would say, well, we never had slaves. We never did anything in that. Blah, 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 blah. We didn't have nothing to do with that. They try to act like they didn't have nothing to do with nothing in history. They just went through the whole existence of the earth not doing nothing, right? Until 1948. That's when everything started cracking for them, right? So, but this historian is telling us that these guys were, the founders of this thing, right? Because, they was like one of the forerunners, the one of the, let's get this machine going, right? So it says, this includes both African slavery and the forced labor of indigenous people. Role 2, number 2, it says, role in colonial administration. Certain Jews and conversos held position in colonial government, tax farming, and and trade monopolies that directly impacted native communities, right? So these people was putting laws and structures so they can have a monopolization on a slave market, right? You know, that's another reason why they got kicked out of 109 countries, because they were creating these, having taking their people and infiltrating these different places, and then creating these, situations where they can have a monopolization over countries, right? Because they control, like, a lot of different industries, right, within that nation, that country. So, and it says, religious hypocrisy from the indigenous perspective. These settlers often preach Christianity, having converted themselves, while still exploiting uh, exploiting the population for labor, land, and profit. That contradicts, could easily breed resentment, right? So the natives was like, all right, you telling us to be Christians and follow this white Jesus, right? You know, built us this big old giant white Jesus so high up in the sky that we all got to look to now. Um, but you're killing us. Like, what did Denzel say on a Member of the Titans? You're killing me, Petey. You're killing me, right? You're killing us, right? You mistreating us. You're oppressing us. You're enslaving us, right? So this Christianity thing that you're talking about is you guys looking a little hypocritical, right? So that's what that's why they start calling them the devil, right? Because they like, well, if Jesus and God and we say we're supposed to do this and be that, but and this is bad and this is evil. You're doing everything that the Bible said. This is bad. This is evil. So you got to be the devil, right? That's what our brothers came up with. That's the conclusion they came up with, right? Down there in Brazil, right? So it says, linked to European oppression. Since Jews in the New World were part of the same elite colonial class as Spanish, Portuguese, Catholics, indigenous people didn't necessarily differentiate, right? Meaning they looked at them as the same, right? You know how they try to now, they're white when it's convenient, and then they turn into those people when it's a benefit, right? So, but our brothers down in Brazil and South America, they like, hey, whether you're Spanish, you're from Spain, you're from Portugal, England, France, wherever you call yourself, y'all the same, right? Basically. Then it says, they saw them all colonizers as agents of conquest, suffering, and sometimes outright demonic cruelty. That's how they all looked at them like, look, hey, we don't care what you call yourself. You got blonde hair and blue eyes. You are the devil that the Bible speaks of, right? Then it says, over time, brutal treatment, forced conversion, forced conversion, land seizures, and economic exploitation fed the idea that these people were not just foreign, but spiritually evil, right? So these people came over, taking land, enslaving people, stealing gold, stealing resources, and preaching Christianity, right? So they said, what did it say again? It says over time, over time, brutal treatment, forced conversion, land seizures, and economic exploitation fed the idea that these people were not just foreign, meaning, look, they just didn't come from another place, but spiritually evil. In the world, in a world where religion and morality were intertwined, being seen as a exploiter or a slave owner could earn you the double label. So they looking at you like, look, you over here exploiting people. You're putting your usury system on us too. You're taking our confiscating our land, right? Making us work for you and all that, right? And it says, whether you were Catholic, converso, or anything else. This book links the Sephardic people, and usury supports the historic reason they were associated with the devil, and 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 Christian Europe, colonial thought, money lending at interest was seen as a sin. So in Europe, so now this is why these people end up getting kicked out of these 900 countries. It wasn't that they just was like, oh, you people are one of those people, get out of here. It wasn't that. It was what they were doing in the country, right? Just like how the banking system is crippling countries to this day, right? That's why a lot of these countries put, what did the guy Gaddafi in them? Gaddafi put them people out, right? And you saw what happened to Gaddafi, right? So, what happened? And it says, in Christian Europe, colonial thought, money lending at interest was seen as sinful and corrupt. So those who practice it were often demonized. So who practiced this stuff? They practiced this stuff. They developed these loan companies, these insurance companies, right? This stuff to, all right, well, you pay me this. If you don't pay me that by this time, I'm going to take your car, I'm going to take your house, I'm going to take your dog. I want it all, right? They invented all this stuff, right? So, and that was causing, people to get into debt, countries get into debt, right? Then it says, since those people were heavily involved in lending due to legal and economic restrictions on Christians, this road fed long-standing stereotypes portraying them as morally evil or in a league with Satan, right? Let's see what it says over here. It says this this is from the Caribbean islands, right? So then it says there's a difference between the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim in observance of their faith and their hold on. Yeah, there's differences between the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim in the observance of their faith and of their morals. These, however, are less significant than disparities between the group and their value systems and the psyche of their members. So meaning, they're the same because they supposedly follow this faith of Judaism, but inside they're like, what is that? No, let me read it right. They're different because how they practice their Judaism, right? But they're the same because they're the devil, right? That's basically what he's saying. It says, but less significant than their disparities between the groups and their value system and in their psyche of their members. There are several subgroups in each of the major divisions. The extended family had and still has greater importance in the Sephardim than the Ashkenazi. Hold on. Let's jump down here. Hold on. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Alright, it says, this kinship was important in the development and conducting the international trade for the 15th to the 17th century prior to the rise of hold on, just start back up here. It says, several There are several subgroups in each of the major divisions. The extended family had still and has greater importance in the Sephardi than the Ashkenazi, than to the Ashkenazi. This kinship was important in development and conduct of the international trade from the 15th to the 16th century. Prior to the rise of Protestantism and capitalism in the mid 17th century, right? So basically, like we were saying earlier, how these people would infiltrate stuff. So, you know, um, so they what I'm saying? So they basically married into these Catholic families, these Catholic families, right? And so they can keep their power because again, they were being forced to convert, and they were still secretly, keeping their Talmudic, practices, right? But on the surface, they were, coming off as Catholic, and they were getting involved with these different groups, so they can infiltrate, right? So they can keep their power. And I tell people all the time, right? I tell people, our people, we go to church, because we really love the Lord, right? We go to church because we like to sing and dance and shout, right? It's entertaining. But what I noticed, they go to church for networking. You know what I'm saying? They might say, oh, I'm a Catholic. So then, oh, you're a Catholic too? So, but then they don't bond because they're, on, like, hey, let's exchange our Catholic ideas. But they use the fact that they're Catholic to bond on other levels, and it's mostly a lot of times to be business, right? Or rather, whatever faith. Oh, you're a Mormon? Okay, I'm a Mormon too. So, what I noticed with them, they use their religion more so as a networking, mechanism. Almost like I guess you can say like a sorority thing. Like, they, you see a little bumper sticker on somebody's car or something like that. You know what I mean? Something like that, right? That's how they look at it. And we the fools, we look at it as something spiritual and that we getting a connection to God, right? Following the white man's religion, right? So, it says, although the Warner Sunbird was boom, boom. Let's see where we at. Exaggerate. Okay, yeah, okay. Although Warner Sunbirds has exaggerated the importance of those people in the development of modern capitalism, it is true that the extension of credit and bills of exchange were introduced. So again, like we were saying, how they invented the credit system, they invented this whole loaning stuff, right? And usury system, right? So it says was introduced by the Sephardi people. It says the Lombards and the other Christian users followed those people. And it says usury was the term for money lending at any rate of interest. So meaning usury meaning they can basically enslave you off of whatever you borrow from them. So again, so you borrow, I let you borrow $100. I say, okay, give me $5,000. Okay, you can get your $100, but I want you to pay me back $5,000, and I want it in 2 months. And if you don't pay me back that $5,000, I'm gonna take your house, right? So then that's how they start getting their wealth. That's how they start accumulating, their things, right? And then it says, including the legal rate, the Roman Catholic Church forbade lending money even at a permitted by the rules. So, like I said, so now the Catholics, they wasn't down with all that. So, but the other people like, hey, but this is what we do, man. We don't know how to. This is our hustle, man. We're like loan sharks at nature, man. This is what we do. We're loan sharks, right? So then it says, boom, boom, boom. It is unfortunate that the user is still applied to those people in the Middle Ages who loan money at a legal rate, to whom is monastery, blah, blah, blah. Okay, hold on. Alright, hold on. Alright, so then let's get over here. It says, so basically, we got a little, how they get into a little usury stuff, right? And that's one of the mechanisms of, enslaving and crippling countries, right? And it says on page 11, the book tries to falsely claim that the Jews are not a race in a sense of bloodline, right? Because that's what they would say too. Like they will always, say that, religio ethno, right? Or no, it's a religion. That's why like you got people like Shine, the rapper Shine over there talking about he following Judaism because it's a religion. But no, it's not. It's a bloodline. You got to be from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So, but that's how they get away with calling themselves the people, because they're like, oh no, yes, a religion, because religion is universal. Anybody can practice a religion, right? But not anybody can wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to be Chinese tomorrow. Then tomorrow you wake up and you're Chinese, right? It doesn't work like that, because you have to be born Chinese, right? Or am I tripping? Maybe I'm tripping, right? But that's what, but these people have pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, right? So it says, the page 11, it says, the Jews as a religio ethno group in the New World. It says, the identification of the Jews as a ethnic group or a race has been discussed by anthropologists and ethnologists over the century. The peoplehood of those people is undeniable. Their status is, hold on, boom, boom, boom. It says, their status as an ethnic group is clear since they possess a religion. They possess a religion that outlines a daily routine of life, a history, nationalistic belief, a culture, indigenous customs, a language, Hebrew, and a pattern of behavior that has been socially transmitted for millennia, right? So, again, he is one of those people, right? So, now, what he's forgetting that makes you, a ethnicity of a, is bloodline. He left bloodline out of there, right? So, and that's the thing, like, you have to be a bloodline. I can't, like I said, I can't say, I like watching Kung Fu movies, right? I like watching a good Kung Fu flick, right? But that doesn't make me Chinese, right? That doesn't make me an Asian person, because I practice Kung Fu and I watch their movies, and, I listened to Jen, and Jen told me he's going to teach me how to speak Chinese, right? So that doesn't make me Asian, right? So it says, there are subgroups within the major group that have been secular. Hold on. It has secular traits held in common with non-Jewish surrounding ethnic groups. Liberian Sephardic Jews are indistinguishable from their Christian neighbors, So, meaning, you people look just like them other Europeans up there, right? So, what are you people talking about that you, these people, right? And, then it says, only the activities involved in practice of religion identifies them as those people. So he said the only thing that makes them stand out from the rest of their European counterparts is that they practice this religion, right? Other than that, they the same, right? And it says those people are divided into two principal groups, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. The former inhabit the Iberian Peninsula and later Eastern Europe, parts of Germany and northern France. Communities of both groups were to be found in other places, but these communities were only fragment of their groups in our legal in our legend. What's the word? Legend that the sardine inhabit, right? Right, cause and this is the thing too, cause like, let's get this over here. Let's go to Obadiah. Obadiah, yeah. Let's go to Obadiah, right? So like, this is where they're getting this name sardine from, right? Again, we gotta understand what we're dealing with. We're dealing with some people that's very crafty, right? They like to make stuff up, and they like to take a little of the truth and mix it in with something else, right? But good thing that the Most High preserves His book. Let's go to Obadiah, right? Go to Obadiah. Where is it? Right here. Boom. So this is where they're getting from. Obadiah 1 and 20 says this, right? Says, the captives of the host of the children of Israel should possess that of the Canaanites, even unto Zarephath, and the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Saraphat, shall possess the cities of the south. So they say, yeah, we're the people of Judah that's in Saraphat, right? And Saraphat is Spain, right? Because Nebuchadnezzar, he took us and he sent us off to Spain, right? But that's not in the Bible. You're not gonna read no account where the Babylonians took us and shipped us off to Spain, right? But that's what they would tell us, right? And they say, yeah, this word right here, Saraphat, that's the ancient word for Spain, right? But is it? It's not, right? Because, hold on really quick. Because even the Hebrew word for that will tell you that that is a place unknown. So even the people that translated the Bible don't even contribute that name to Spain, right? Just hold on one second. Hey, hold on one second. So let's see. All right, so I don't know if y'all can hear this or not. So this is the word Seraphid, who they're trying to tell us this is ancient Spain. You know, this is where we went to. You know, this is what they would tell us if you ask one of those people, right? So this is the word in Hebrew.
Strong's H 5614. Sepharad. Sepharad.
That's how you say it in Hebrew, right? And it means Sepharad, a place where the Israelites were exiled, site unknown. It doesn't say anything about Spain, but that's what they would tell you, right? But the translators that translate the Bible from the Hebrew didn't put a geographic location to this word. It says site unknown, right? So that's why it says over here, back over here, that's why it says right here, there are legends that the Sardine, that the Sardine inhabit the land of Spain, right? So inhabited boom boom boom. Says inhabited place of national origin, family, traditional folklore. Boom boom boom. And that's the same thing. Hold on. So, but yeah, so back over here. And it says Genesis 17:7 says, I will establish my covenant with between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations, and for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your offspring after you. Here, offspring Hebrew Zara means seed, shows that the covenant is a hereditary and passed through the bloodline from Abraham to his descendants. So again, it's not no ethno religion thing that they be trying to push, right? It's a bloodline thing. So I got messing with these little kids, got people getting sick and stuff. And it says oh, they're trying to get me sick. But it says Genesis 21:12 says, through Isaac shall your offspring be named, right? Because that's what the prophecy says. So it's not no religious thing like, oh, if you believe, you know, you one of us. Nah, you have to, it's a bloodline thing. That's why they don't use this book to prove that, you know, their authenticity in it, because they can't. That's why they use their Talmud and their Mishnah and stuff like that, right? And it says this narrows the seed line to Isaac, not Ishmael, showing God promised are tied to specific lineage. Psalms 105:6. O offspring of Abraham, his servant, children of Jacob, his chosen ones, right? Because that's who we are. We as his chosen ones, right? It's not no oh well, I just believe, you know, anybody you believe, you know, you can be a part of this. No, it's not a religion. You have to be born in this, right? And it says Israel is directly called the physical descendants of Abraham and Jacob, and chosen as a family line. And you know, you have some of them that will say, oh yeah, that's a metaphor, you know, that's a allegory, right? Because they don't even believe in the book, a lot of them. Like we went over before, their nation is secular. I mean, because if 90% of your population don't believe in God, I mean, you're secular, right? Then it says, Isaiah 45:25 says, the Lord, all the offsprings of Israel should be justified and show glory. And, right? And it says, the promise applied to the offspring of Israel, making the bloodline specific, not open-ended to converts from all nations. So, and we see that because it's all for the bloodline of Israel. That's what the whole book is about. So it's not it's ethno-religio, so religio ethnos, how they say, no, there ain't none of that, right? Then Romans 9:7 says, not all are children of Abraham, but they are his offspring. But through Isaac shall your offspring be named, right? Because Abraham had 8 sons total, but out of those 8 sons, God only called Isaac his son, right? So, and because that was the only one that God was dealing with, then through Isaac he started dealing with Jacob. Then through Jacob it's the Israelites, right? Then it says, Paul affirms the covenant seed line, stressing that it is traced through Isaac, still a biological line, though not every descendant is counted spiritually faithful. Here are a few ESV verses where Israel is described as a race, along with short explanations for each, right? Then you have got Ezra 9:2. For they are taken, some are, says, for they have taken some of their daughters to be wives to themselves and for their sons, so that the holy race has mixed itself with the people of the land, and the faithfulness of the land of the officials and the chiefs have been foremost. Israel is literally called the holy race, right? And that's what we call it the holy race. It says in Hebrew, showing they were seen as a distinct bloodline set apart from other nations, right? And it says, he dealt shrewdly, this is Acts 7:9. He dealt shrewdly with our race and forced our fathers to expose their infants so that they would not be kept alive. Stephen refers to Israel under Pharaoh as our race, and because that's what we are, a race of people. It's not religio ethno stuff, right? Then it says 1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a people for his possession, right? So what are these people talking about? So that's how they try to get away with it by, it's not a religion, this, you can practice Judaism, just convert, just get your, come to one of these little filthy, nasty rabbis that's giving little infants herpes, right? And become one of us, right? So, yeah, and that's documented too. You can look that up. They doing that, right? Yes, they giving them that the package, as we used to say. I said I was gonna be careful this time around. I don't think I've been kind of careful. Let me slow it down. Let me chill. I gotta chill. So they're asking The I gotta chill. The Ashkenazim were proven to become converts. This book proves the Sephardim also. The next page is one of the most important pieces of false evidence the Sephardim used to claim legitimacy. And it says, I'm going to read a little bit of this, and it says, the Liberian Peninsula during the biblical times, unquestionably, they were at the least 70 CE when Titus exiled 50,000 Jews from Judea to Sepharad, the biblical name for what is now Spain, right? We don't gotta read this. We already disproved that because we just went into the biblical dictionary, the Bible dictionary, the blue letter, right? And this proved that no, it wasn't Spain, and there's no historical source outside of what we're reading now that would say that they were taken to this place, right? I said the Babylonians at first. I meant to say the Romans, the Titus, because it says Titus right here, right? So yeah, we can go past that. We already went through that because we just got that. All right. It says problem 1. The historical sources show Titus. There no historical sources show Titus expelling 50,000 Jews to Spain. Problem 2. The claim that the Sepharad Obadiah 1 and 20 refers to the claim that Sepharad and Obadiah 1 and 20 refers to Spain has been used in Jewish traditions, especially from the medieval period onward, to give Iberian Jews, Sephardim, a direct biblical anchor. Applying their ancestry goes back to the exile from Jerusalem in antiquity, but which we just looked up that word in the Bible in Obadiah 1 and 20, and it says origin unknown, place unknown. It doesn't tell us that it was Spain, right? So that's why in the page before this page that we just read, it says that it was legend that it happened, meaning it's not, it's not a factual thing. It's something that they made up, like everything else they made up, right? And if you ask me, the word legend is being nice. I can think of another L word I can use, right? And it says, by identifying Spain with Sepharad, the connection to the Bible strengthens the perception that the Jews living there were not later converts, but bloodline Israelites from the time of the prophets, right? So that's how they was trying to, they took that verse and tried to, live off that verse, right? But again, we got technology. Like in the book of Daniel, it tells us in the end times, knowledge will increase, right? So we know these things now. So we can look up these Hebrew words. There's no longer where, people be like, well, such and such wrote that book. The white man wrote that book. Like, well, okay, you can say that. But you know what? We got the ancient manuscripts that we can look at and see what it actually says. And it don't say no damn Spain. It says origin unknown. It says it don't know. It says it don't have a geographical location, right? So it's just speculation, right? So it says, however, scholars and historical sources note that this identification is a late and uncertain, meaning it's late. It's a Johnny come lately, concept that they came up with, and there's no proof to it. And we just look into the another biblical source, Blue Letter Bible, at the definition of the word, and it's not Spain, right? There's a lot of words we can look in here, like when we read about Russia, and I'd be like, all right, Magog is ancient Moscow, and Gog is king or prince of Russia, right? I know a lot of times I don't go to the Blue Letter and show y'all, but I can actually go to the Blue Letter and show you that Magog is a city in Russia, because the Blue Letter tells us that, right? So certain places in the Blue Letter, certain names in the Blue Letter that the Blue Letter would give you, what it will tell you, but it tells us for that place, it's unknown, right? So where are they getting this Spain stuff from? Anyway, in antiquity, there is no record of the Jews equating Sepharad with Spain, right? So even back then, in the time of the first century, that was not the name of that place, right? Some are black people out there, the ones that into the more science and stuff like that, right? Like, our brothers was up in Spain, right? The Moors, right? Was Spain ever called Sepharad in y'all accounts, right? Was that ever the name of that place, right? So, again, it says, in antiquity, there's no record of the Jews equating Sepharad with Spain. Some early sources, including the Septuagint and rabbinical discussions, place it in Asia Minor, especially Sardis, not Iberia. The Targum Jonathan, 3rd, 5th C century AD, may be the earliest render Sepharad as Mesopotamia, possibly meaning Hispania, but this is centuries after Obadiah, right? So even like the earliest source that they have on where Sepharad could be, it says Hispania is possibly meaning Hispania, but not. But this is centuries after Obadiah. So it's like again, it's like years and years after but it's no other source on it. And it says modern historians consider Spain equal Sepharad linked to medieval introspective traditions, not proven historical location. Thus, the biblical connection to Spain is interpretive and symbolic, and not geographically verifiable fact from the time of Obadiah, right? So no ancient source attests to that place being called that, right? But yet these people say that's where they at and that's where they from, right? So we went into the definition of Sepharad, right? It says a place where the Israelites were exiled, site unknown, right? And it says, why would the Jews, those people from Spain, call it the fatherland if they knew they were the descendants of Israel? So why did they call Espanol, Spain, the fatherland, right? And it says, if the Sephardic, those people called Spain their fatherland, it shows they were identifying a European country, not ancient Israel, as their ancestral homeland, right? Which made me pop up with another verse in my head. Hold on one second. Let's get this in Romans. Or is it in, Galatians. Let's get this in Galatians real quick. Come on, dude. Now the phone that wanna act slow. Hold on, we'll get it. Where is it at? Find it like this. Find it just like this. Oh, don't tell me this thing hacking up. Hold on. Phone. Bear with me, cause phone when I act slow. Probably got too many things open up on here. Close that. Boom. One second. Here we go. Galatians 4:26. So yeah, Galatians 4:26 say, what did it say? Thought I had another. Galatians 4:26 says, but Jerusalem, or they hate. Says, but Jerusalem, which is above and free, which is mother of us all, right? That's what, that's what we say as Israelites, that Jerusalem is the mother of us all. But these people, they calling Spain their fatherland, right? Here we go, right here. Highlight this real quick. So, yeah. So back over here. Hold on. It says, if the Sephardic people call Spain their fatherland, it shows they were identifying a European country, not Israel, as their ancestral land, ancestral home. But we see here, we say, but Israel, which is above, is free, which is mother of us all, right? That's our homeland, Israel. So then it says, this undermines the claim of being direct bloodline Israelites from the land of Israel, because it reflects deep generational roots, cultural identity, and national loyalty ties to Spain, right? Then it says, I think we read that already. Oh no, we can read it though. It says, It says monogamy, marrying with one group, was practiced by all Jews in the days of the Inquisition. Monogamy was a sense of um, one of those Spanish words for the secret of those people in Spain. Portugal and their colonies marriage to non to non-Jews would have disclosed to the spouse the practice of Judaism and thereby risk the report of practices to the priest during confession. So, so they, when it was, you know, the Portuguese and all them, they would marry some of these people, then I guess, they would still be Catholic, and the their Catholic spouse would be basically influenced by their church to spy on their Jewish, spouse to see if they're still practicing Judaism or that they really convert, right? Um, Jews have maintained their religious ethnicity by inheritance to the tenets of their faith. Uh, a separateness of their maintain of their distinction morals and morals necessary for their survival of any minority group, right? Um, so, they was, secretly, still practicing their religion as, they were claiming to convert to Catholicism so they can maintain their power and their position that they had. So they, then, and it says, emancipation and the assimilation of the culture of the dominant group is a cultive grace for minorities. We distinguish between assimilation and abandonment of one's own morals and accusation. Hold on. Then it says an adoption of the new culture patterns. Assimilation by a group includes the loss of distance, distinctiveness, and Eric Collett stated. Their existence is very real Jewish continuity, and yet this continuity is not purely physical, not mere blood relationship, but follows from the fact that the Jews are a ethnic group, but one that different from national group around it by having a religion of its own and being deeply rooted in this religion. Judaism have no dogma except the belief in unity of God. The belief of the Messiah has not arrived, and yet is come. Yet and is yet to come. Is one of the reasons of its survival. So now these people don't even believe in Jesus, right? They ain't got no Jesus piece, right? But then you have the Christian church that would, put on a cake for these people and say, yeah, we got to pray for Israel, right? But they don't tell you what they teach about, Christianity, how they feel about Christians, right? They think Christians are like the most dumbest, idol worshippers ever, right? And we ain't gonna get into what they say about your sweet Jesus, right? So they don't believe in Jesus, right? And so got boom boom boom. Says Messiahism maintained the Jews and their determination to maintain with the faith lacking such conviction they would have all have while people are constellation or while I'm gonna read it right. make it bigger. Hold on. While all people are a constellation of complexities, there is the fact of the complex psyche of the Iberian Sephardim that is noteworthy. The, the Spanish Jew was loyal to the language and culture of his native land even after his expulsion. He also determined. He also remained true to his faith. Americo Castro wrote, "The Jews expelled from their fatherland, that is Spain, in 1492, felt themselves as Spanish as the Christians." Boom, boom, boom. And it says, boom, boom. Page 19. It says, page 19, Nuremberg laws drew inspiration from Spain's medieval limpieza de sangre, a purity of blood statute, which were enforced by the Catholic Church to exclude them people and their descendants from public life. If the world condemns the H-man for these radical laws, it should hold the Church equal accountable, since its own inclusionary system provided modern centuries earlier, right? So and it says, page 36 says that what happened in 1948 was way before the H-man. So why does the world associate what happened in 1948? Uh-oh, why are they doing it? Uh-oh. Alright, here we go. So why does the world associate what happened in 1948 to the H-man? It says, in Henry C. Lea 1908 book, The Inquisition of the Spanish Dependencies, he described how between 1634 and 1639, the Lima of Peru, Jews caught by the Inquisition were brutally executed, burned alive, and called this the H word, offered to God between 1634 and 1639. The Lima Inquisition arrests Jews, secret Jews, conversos, right? So he's saying that what happened in the 1940s to those people basically happened like 200 years earlier before, but history only really talks about the H-man for what he did, in World War II, right? But he's saying that the Catholic Church was doing this before the H-man got on the scene, right? So then, let you know the history of violence that the Christianity possesses, right? Then says they were executed by burning. The Inquisition reviewed this as religious sacrifice. Leah describes it ironically as a 1948 stuff in the old sense of burning off as a burnt offering, presented and mercy, highlighting the hypocrisy of killing people in the name of a merciful God. And so boom, boom, boom. But why? Hold on. But why did the Holy Office and the H-man wanted to wipe them out, right? So they came up with these laws. They was persecuting them, you know, hunting them down, So it says, why was they, why did they want to do these things? Was it because they were saying who they were, or was it because of what they was doing, right? So it says, number one, religious hostility. Catholic orthodoxy in Spain and Portugal after the Requisition saw Judaism as heresy and a threat to Christian unity. The Inquisition Holy Office was designed to root out anyone suspected of practicing Judaism in secret, crypto Jews or conversos. It says many whites in the colonies viewed Jews as Christ killers and enemies of the faith or cursed people. Inherited medieval anti-dumb people theology. Even converted dumb people knew Christians were never fully trusted. So even after their conversion, they didn't really fully trust them because, again, their practices that they were doing, how they were operating, right? And again, they only converted for they can infiltrate and they can continue to keep their positions, right? And so it says, so they were often accused of Judaizing, no matter how Catholic they outwardly appeared. Racial impurity of blood laws, the Limpia de Sangre, pure blood laws in Spain and its colonies, legally discriminate against anyone with Jewish ancestry, even generations after conversion. White Spaniards saw themselves as old Christians, no Jews or Muslim ancestry, and considered new Christians, converted Jews or Muslims, as racially inferior. And that's too with the Catholic Church and the Christianity. That's why they went around enslaving the world with what's that the manifest destiny and all the other stuff, right? That they done said, hey, let's go enslave everybody that don't, follow what we follow, right? Or look like we look like. So then says this rationalized religion meant you would never be outrun, never be outrun. Jewish ancestry, you'll never be able to outrun Jewish ancestry. It become a permanent social strand. Economic competition. In many colonies, conversos were highly successful in financial trade and financial skill professions, right? So now this is two things we got to know. So this is why we pointing this stuff out, okay? So in the Bible, it says that the real people of God will be in poverty, they'll be going through tribulation, right? They won't be, successful and, as they should be, right? But these people are 0.2%, have the most billionaires and etc., right? So, but this is what we're dealing with. So and they're getting rich, amongst all these people. Let's get this real quick. Let's get Deuteronomy. And where is that? Where that? Man, these people trying to get me sick. Here we go, right here. So it's at 43. So now, it says, let's read this one more time. It says, in many colonies, conversos were highly successful in trade, financial, and skilled professions. So number one, what do you think they were trading, right? This was during, think about the time of this. What were they skilled in trading? They were trading black and brown people, us, Israelites, right? And this right here, Deuteronomy 28 and 43 says, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. So now the Bible says, whenever the Israelites assimilate amongst people, the strangers that's among us, if we allow them, if we're not keeping the laws of God, they're going to come up very high above us, and we're going to come down very low. But these people, they're going to different countries, and they're prospering to the point where the native people are becoming jealous of them, right? So it says, this success breeds jealousy among white merchants who sometimes use the Inquisition to remove Jewish competitors by accusing them of heresy, right? So that's the heart of the whole thing. If you want to know the truth of it, those little rednecks, the ones that don't like those people, and they always be talking stuff about those people. I mean, to be real, really, the reason why they don't like them is because they don't share. If those people, open up the bank today and say, hey, rest of white people of the world, y'all can share in this wealth that we got along with us too, right? They'll love them tomorrow, right? It wouldn't be no swastikas and stuff, hanging around and all this stuff. They'll love them, right? But they don't share, so that's why they don't like them. And them people, Esau hate people that don't share with him. If you don't share with him, he's gonna take it. He's gonna want to take it from you, right? So, just like watching a civil rival, you know what I'm saying? They are brothers, right? And they just mad that one of their brothers got it and they ain't got it, right? And they brothers just be giving them little crumbs every now and then, right? So that's where the tension come in at. You want to be real about it. So, because they on one accord when it comes to hating us, but they will bicker amongst themselves amongst that because, like I said, they don't share. They don't equally share the wealth. So it says, in the Caribbean and the Dutch British colonies, openly Jewish communities like the Curaçao and Samarine dominated certain sectors like sugar, shipping, and trade, again sparking resentment from competitors. So from white competitors. So they over there dominating the slave trade in South America, right? They over there doing their thing, but again, They would tell us, oh yeah, we didn't have no parts in the slave trade. Oh my God, what was going on? You people were enslaved? Oh my God, we didn't know. We didn't have anything to do with it. Right? That's what they would tell us. Right? But they were dominating over there. And we're going to see how much they was dominating. Right? Then it says, the Caribbean and, okay, it says, political suspicion. Spain and Portugal were Catholic empires, but the Jews often hold on. Okay, here we go. It says Spain and Portugal were Catholic empires, but the Jews often had business ties with Protestant powers, Dutch and English, that were rivals in the New World. White officials feared Jewish merchants as possible spies, smugglers, or traitors aiding enemy nations. I mean, because that's their history. I mean, if you know about World War II, they funded both sides. They gave the H-man some money, and they gave the G-man some money, right? He gave everybody some money during World War II, right? So, it says the in a sermon name, for example, the Dutch authorities at times mistrust those people, planner elites, because of their transatlantic network. You know, because they developed a whole network. You know, they had a whole network system of how they was, you know, importing and enslaving and selling slaves and the, you know, the stuff that they was getting off the plantation, all that. They had a whole network, like we was reading earlier about monopolizing stuff, right? And it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, despite what we have been led to believe, in large numbers, the Jews were involved in not only the funding of the slave ships, but also in transportation and ownership of slaves on plantations. Page 61, being a tradesman was a major economic role of the Jews during the colonial period. Peruvian Jews had more diversified economic activities. They range from peddlers to great merchants, meaning they range from, you know, like people that was just, you know, just your regular slave salesman to, you know, just big old, to they like Walmart other thing, right? You know, they got a whole big old discount shopping center for buying slaves and whatever you want, right? And it says they were slave contractors or brokers who brought Negroes from Africa and participated in purchases and purchase and sell of slaves, right? So, like I said, they were buying and selling, right? Getting rich. Page 188. In May 1687, an inventor was made of the area of a submarine known as the Torretico, which consists of 9 plantations for raising sugar. Sugar cane with 20 with hold on. I think keep moving with 233 plantations with 181 slaves. Right? They had. Hold on, let's read this one more time. Says in May 1667, an inventory was made in the area of Samaram, known as Torica. That's in Brazil, I believe. Then it says which consists of 9 plantations. So these Jews had 9 plantations going by, 1660s, and raising sugar cane with 233 233 slaves. So they had 233 slaves on those 9 plantations. You do the math. 53 sugar kettles, 106 head of cattle, and 28 men plus additional 6. 6 were owned by 18 Portuguese Jews. In 1694, there were in this area 92 Sephardic and 12 Ashkenazi families. So in this area, it was 92 Sephardic, those people, and Ashkenazi Jews living in that area, and they had plantations, right? And they was doing their thing with the plantation game. And it says, by 1730, Jews owned 115 plantations out of 400. So out of the 400 plantations that was down there in Brazil, they own 115 of them, right? Hold on one second. Have it like. All right. So yeah. So they own 115 of them things, right? Out of 400. So now think about this. So now the real Jews supposed to be in poverty, what it says over here, it says the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low, right? So, whenever we are assimilated with people, following their customs and all that, we're going to become the second-class citizens in that environment, and the others is going to be above us. But that's not happening with them. They're enslaving the indigenous people there, and they're shipping in black people from Africa, right? That's not happening with them. So they're not who they say they are, right? And they're exactly who we thought they were, right? Luke 21 and 24 says, Weymouth they will fall by the sword, or be carried off into slavery among all Gentiles, all the Gentiles. And Jerusalem shall be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the appointed times of the Gentiles have expired. Right? So that's what happened to the real Jews. 70 AD happened. This is what Christ was talking about, giving a prophecy. Giving a prophecy about 70 AD. And so it says, they will be fall by the sword and will be carry off into slavery among all the Gentiles. So that's what happened to the real Israelites. We were in slavery to all nations. We wasn't going around enslaving all nations. Right? The Bible didn't say that's what we're going to be doing until Christ come back, enslaving all nations. But this is what they're doing, right? The Bible says, Christ says the opposite. He said, we're going to be enslaved to all nations. And it says, according to the words of Jesus, the true Israelites would be enslaved all throughout the world, not the ones enslaving others. Deuteronomy 28:43. It says the standard of living for the foreigners who live among you will rise higher and higher, while your standard of living will sink lower and lower. Right? That's the same thing we read over here in the King James version, but a different translation. So that's what happens to us whenever we assimilate amongst other people. They gets higher amongst us, and we become the second class citizen where we're asking them for jobs, we're asking them for money, we asking them can they help us, right? That's what happens. That's why God said we are a holy people, meaning we are separate. That's what the word holy means. Not when you go to church, they say the word holy all the time, and everybody thinks it's some type of magic word, that you say holy and God show up, like holy, poof, now here's God and Jesus, right? No, holy means to be separate. That's what the word means, to be separate, right? So, and whenever we're not separate, this happens. It says, the foreigner who lives among you will rise higher and higher, and your standard of living will sink lower and lower. The Bible also says foreigners amongst the true Israelites will rise above them and oppress them. Does this sound like the history of our people, or what does the Israelites have been, or what the Israelites have been going through, right? Then it says, Jewish population on page 4 and 5 the book. It reads, Bruce Sinnock, for instance, commented about the lack of emphasis on Portugal, the Portuguese expansion, and on early Brazil history. He declares that most historians of Latin America, at least in the United States, know little of Portugal and Brazil. Know little about Portugal and Brazil, since the Jews were only a minority group in those places, right? So it's saying like it's not too much history, Hold on 1 second. So like you again. So now these people, 0.2% of the world, but they're enslaving everybody, right? And it says, he has declared that most historians of Latin America, at least in the United States, know a little about Portugal and Brazil, since the Jews were only a minority group in these places. So there was a minority group in these places causing all this havoc, right? And it says, so despite their small numbers, the Jews in the New World held overwhelmingly disproportionate amounts of power. So again, the real Israelites would not have power until Christ come back. But these people out here just using their power all willy-nilly, right? Then it says, as cited in previous slides, Jews had controlled all had controlled nearly 30% of all plantations in Suriname in the 18th century, and in certain municipalities of all of them were owned by Jews. So so now this is a global population um, thing I'm looking at of their population, and their population has been studied at 0.2% for decades, right? For decades, it had been studied at 0.2%, which is another interesting point because, again, the Bible tells you that we are like the sand of the sea. You know, that's how many it is of us, right? But these people have the least population on the planet, 0.02%. But yet, these people control and have the most billionaires per capita, right? But again, the Bible says the real Jews is going to be going through the curses and the punishments of God until Christ coming back, right? That's what the Bible prophecy says, right? So, who is these people? So it says Jewish plantations, right? That's the word that we thought never go together, right? That's what they tell us. These two words never go together. Jewish plantations, page 140 to 141. Sugarcane was introduced into Brazil not only from the Mediterranean, but also from the Canary Islands, and the Jews may have played a part in this matter, since there were Jewish planters on these islands at the time. Although the majority of the Jews reside in the urban areas, the Inquisition records of all the records. Boom, boom, boom. What's this thing was? I don't know why. Says the Inquisition record. Hold on, this thing keep. The Inquisition records of the 18th century disclose a large number of persons of real or alleged Jewish origins in rural in rural districts, right? So, hold on, let me read it right. It says, boom, the Jews may have played a part in this matter since there was Jewish planters on these islands at the time. Although the majority of the Jews reside in urban areas, the Inquisition records of the 18th century disclose a large number of persons of real or alleged Jewish origin in rural districts. And you in rural districts because that's the countryside. That's where the plantations would be, right? That's where you would grow stuff at, right? And it says one explanation for this is that the original and early inhabitants became plantation owners. These plantations originally grew sugar canes, but later tobacco and cotton supplanted the sugar. The Inquisition officials would have found it difficult to arrest the Jews on a plantation, both because of their immense size. So these plantations were so greatly big that it was hard to arrest the Jewish plantation owners. That's one reason why they couldn't arrest them. And then another reason why, it says for immense size, one larger than Portugal, right? So think about one Jewish family owning a plantation as the size of the country of Portugal, right? Can you imagine a plantation that is the size of a country in the middle of Brazil? Look, I'm going to see if y'all can see this, right? this is like a depiction of how it would look if this plantation was in the United States, right? So last time I did this, they done cut the live. So let's see, right? I don't know if y'all can see it, but you see that little blue thing right there, right? So that little blue section, that whole spot, so think about from Chicago, Illinois, all the way to St. Louis, Missouri. Just imagine if that whole stretch of, that distance was all plantation of your people, right? Black and brown people working right there, right? Imagine that, right? So imagine a plantation the size of the state of Indiana. Imagine if you out of town and you traveling, then you go into the state of Indiana, right? The whole state of Indiana is one big old slave plantation. Imagine that. Wouldn't that be crazy? Right? Excuse me. And like I said, they're trying to get me sick. So that's why it was hard for them to arrest them, because the plantations were so large. Right? And then they had their slaves would fight for them. Right? So, then you got your a plantation that's the size of a country, and then you have your slaves that will, go to bat for you, right? And it says Portugal is 35,580 square miles. That's roughly the size of the state of Indiana. I just said that. Right? And it says, this means there's one Jewish plantation larger than 12 U.S. states. One of their Jewish plantations that they had in Brazil was larger than 12 U.S. states. Imagine that. Right? And it says, the Jews had so much control of the sugar and slave trade that 66 Christian companies I'm sorry, yes, and read it right, getting tired. So 66 companies, about 66 Christians complained about the power that they had. It then says that they were among the leading slaveholders and slave traders, all supposedly under the curses from God and being a ethnic minority in the region, right? So again, we just read over here that whenever we assimilate or be around these, we're not going to be successful. But these people are able to rise above these people and enslave them, right? But, the real Israelites would not be able to do these things, because the Bible said we wouldn't be able to do it. So, it says, let's read this. It says that the Sephardim were tax farmers, agriculturists, and plantation owners. The Ashkenazim participate in the commercial fields. 66 Christian merchants complained to the state general in 1641 that the Jews controlled the sugar trade and gave all best positions to their newly arrived co-religionists. I.S. Rehav wrote Les Christos Novos Constitution. Well, that's a little Spanish. This stuff, I ain't gonna read all that. It says the Christian Constitution on on the base of the Portuguese merchants class and their economics importance and equality great in Brazil. So basically, the Christian merchants wanted the market to be fair because these people were monopolizing the slave market. They was gobbling up everything. There was had a company, an industry for everything that you want, right? Like they invented the insurance companies. They started, the money lending stuff, all that, right? So people like, hey, can we get some money too? You know what I'm saying? Can I eat too? The other, they other white conglomerates was like, can we get a piece of the cake too? Can we eat with you, right? So that's what where the tension coming in at, right? Because they're stealing all the money. I mean, they making all the money, and they other people can't get none. So Deuteronomy 28:29 says, "You will grope about in broad daylight like someone blind, and you will not be able to find your way." So the real Israelites would be lost in the sauce. Like you see our people sometimes is lost in the sauce, don't know what's going on, don't know which way is up. They just out here just crazy, just being foolish. You will not prosper in anything you do. You will be consistently oppressed and robbed, and there will be no one to help you. You will be engaged to a young woman, but someone else will marry her. You will build a house, but never live in it. You will plant vineyards, but never eat the grapes, right? So that happened to us in slavery, right? It says, you will not prosper in anything you do, meaning, a lot of times, we get a lot of, stumbling blocks put in our way, a lot of red line stuff, a lot of, stuff that they put to stop us from being successful, and it comes in many different forms, right? Then it says, you will be consistently oppressed and robbed, and that's what they do every years, whatever. They come up with new rules and new laws to further oppress us, right? And especially, this guy that's in office now, the stuff that they coming up with, right? So they always coming up with stuff, right? So it says transportation of slaves. It says, page 170, Jews were most very and hold on, boom boom. It says, hold on. It says Jews were almost every settlement stretching across the northern coast of South America, from Carnega eastward to Guanas. They came with ships carrying African blacks to be sold as slaves. The traffic in slaves were royal monopoly, right? So they had a royal monopoly on the slavery industry during that time, right? In poker, they got something called a royal flush. These people had a royal monopoly when it came to that running slaves, right? Then it says, and the Jews were often appointed as agents for the crown as their sale. When the king granted Pedro Gomez regional exclusive right to import slaves to the colonies. So then the king gave this guy exclusive license to operate and import slaves, right? So he was the only guy that had the right to bring in slaves into the colonies, right? If anybody else doing it, they breaking the law. Then it says the contract contained a clause permitting Gomez to have his own ship to Portuguese who would be charged of sale of the Negroes and do anything else necessary among the people of the sea. The King of Portugal himself gave this Jewish man exclusive rights to import black slaves. Right? So this guy got a license from the king himself to sell black slaves, right? To sell us, right? Then it says boom boom boom. The Jews participated in buying, selling, and brokering transportation and enslavement of black people from West Africa, even so far as to have embarkation points, embarrations, I would say that, points in Africa, meaning they had slave, basically you can say like slave outposts, or slave warehouses where they would, in Africa, where they would just, like slave colonies where they, basically like warehouses, where they have slaves stored and stuff that they would, take, right? What's they say over here? So it says, out of the book right here, it says, Brazilian economy was based on Negro slave labor to produce sugar and tobacco. As a result of slave labor from Africa, the only labor of the whites was to issue order to the slaves. So like, do this nigga, do that nigga, move that nigga, lift that nigga, right? That's the only work that the white man have to do, right? And if you pay attention, it be like that at work sometime, depending on where you work. Even if they got the same position as you, they still always trying to tell you what to do. Like, dude, we get paid the same amount of money, dude. You ain't about to tell me what to do, right? But that's what they be on. Then it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, boom. Says, as a result, slave labor from Africa, the only labor of the whites was to issue orders to the slaves, without whom Portuguese America was not viable. The embarkation points for the slaves was Luanda, Africa, where there were Jews who served as slave brokers. So they was over there being slave brokers, selling the slaves, all that stuff, right? But they'll tell you they had nothing to do with nothing, right? It says, during the entire colonial period, which ended in 1822 with independence, Portugal continued to send Brazil its criminals, impoverished ex-pirates and peasants from Vienna, Porto, and Lisbon. They were shipped to Rio de Janeiro, and it says boom, boom, boom. Then it says some came from Beira, an old Jewish center, as well as several other Jewish centers in northern and central Portugal. Many immigrants became lavanders or sharecroppers on the large sugar plantations. They did little work other than supervise a few slaves. The traditional role of the Jew as a merchant was chosen by some of the new Jewish immigrants. The Brazilian Portuguese had had empathy for the merchant class, which Baxter attributes to the fact that the Portuguese-speaking world highly percent of the successful merchants were crypto Jews or new Christians. Uh, origin origin lately because of other avenues of advancements were officially closed to them, right? So I think basically, they was trying to the whole new world order, right? They was trying to make the whole operation, the whole Jewish thing, the whole way of the world, right? They was trying their world domination at this point, basically. Was trying to make their version of the Hebrew language, the language franca, because they like, hey, look, we doing so much business down here, we got so much power, so much control. We're everywhere. Hey, why don't everybody do what we do and pay us for doing it, right? That's basically what was going on, right? Then hold on. It says page 189. In 1654, Holland made grants of immunity and other privileges to the people of the Hebrew nation that go with the West Coast. They were given 16 Pacific privileges. Let's look at the number 9, right? So, exemption from tax and customs for 7 years if one become a sugar plantation owner with 50 Negroes shall enjoy 12 years of freedom from taxes. So if so basically they was kind of incentivizing you to become a slave owner because then you can get a tax break, right? Then it says boom, boom, boom. Then it says 12 years. It says 12 years of freedom from taxes, customs, and duties, but with a plantation of ox and 30 Negroes, then 9 years of exemption, right? So depending on how many slaves you got, bigger tax break you get. So I wonder how much that guy who had a plantation at the same size as the state of Indiana. I don't even know what that looks like. I can't even imagine even having that much of land to yourself, But I wonder what his taxes was looking like. It says treatment of the natives. As illustrated, the relationship between blacks and the Jews during the time of colonization was comparable to the relationship of blacks and other groups of Europeans. One of the slaves and one of a slave and master. But what about the indigenous population? The author gives us some insight on page 135. Page 15. And it says the Jews were presented in Espanol. I don't know why I'm getting tongue tied. Española. Still didn't say it right. Modern day San Domingo and Haiti, and other Caribbean islands as early as 1495. There were at least 6 Jews for Columbus on his first voyage. Some Jewish soldiers went from Nazareth, Navarre, how do you say that? Then it says in 1519 to capture Cortez in Mexico. Navez was defeated and his troops joined Cortez, who completed the conquest of the Aztecs in 1521, thereby beginning the Spanish colonization in the new hemisphere. So they end up taking down our Aztec brothers, right? And it says page 140 and 141 is one explanation for this, that the original and early inhabitants became plantation owners. These plantations originally grew sugar cane, but later tobacco and cotton supplanted the sugar. The Inquisition officials would have found difficult to arrest the Jews on a plantation, both of their immense size, one larger than Portugal itself. So, we already covered that plantation where one was larger than Portugal itself, right? Then it says, and because the Negroes and the Indians were, for the most part, friendly to the Jews. So the two reasons why they didn't really, they couldn't act and arrest them, because they were criminals of the crown, but they couldn't arrest them because their plantation was too big. It was making a lot of money, and then if they did try to arrest them, their slaves will fight for them, right? Just like how we got Negroes today, our people today fighting for them people today, fighting for the white man today, siding with ICE in them, right? Thinking ICE in them is a good idea. So yeah, that's pretty much it right there, right? Exposing them who they are, showing their role in our in slavery here in America, and how influential they were in the movement of it, and how if although they are a minority, how they were a very important part in enslaving the black and Hispanic people here in America, right? And that's why they don't want you to read this book, because this book exposes them. It lets you know that, yeah, they had a hand in the slave trade, that they're not who they say they are, because the Bible says that the people of God won't have power to, on this earth until the Messiah comes back. And last time I checked, the Messiah is not here, right? It's still hell on earth. Everybody's still crazy, right? So they can't be who they say they are, and this book be true, right? Because it just can't be, right? So, like I said, that was it right there. Hopefully I was edifying. Got a little information about these, people and what they was doing during that, time they're rolling in our slavery and all that stuff. How they financed a lot of stuff, and then that one family who had a plantation that was I'm still blown away about having a plantation the size of Dago, Indiana, right? They some Indianimals out there, man. They had a plantation like that big. That's crazy, right? So, but yeah, that was it.
To use this feature, please make sure your app is running and can access the internet.
That cool stuff. So yeah, hopefully I was edifying. We still keeping our foot on their neck constantly, right? We ain't letting up on these people, right? So my son trying to get me sick. They're trying to get me sick over here. But I'm gonna get me some tea real quick. That's what I need in my life. Drink me some tea. Hold on, check this out real quick. So, got me sniffing and stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna say shalom, peace, and give me some tea. They trying to get me sick out here. They try to stop the lesson, we just start, the second time I was able to get through it, You know what I'm saying? They was trying to block it the first time, but we made it through. So I'm gonna say peace, shalom. Hopefully I was edifying. Till next time, we're still keeping our foot on their neck the whole time, right? And we out. I said we out. I said, goddamn it, we out. We out. We was out, but we still here. Hold on 1 second. Gotta get on my AV department. AV department messing up. Now we out.
I ain't really wanna be roofing when it's wartime. Niggas love the clout chase, that's the shit they glorify.